I've been using the iPhone 17 Pro for a couple of months now, and in this video I'm going to give you my long-term review and I'll answer if this is going to replace my main camera or not. Spoiler alert, I'll mainly use it for video, so I'll review it from a filmmaker's perspective, alright? So let's start with the image quality and the actual hardware. The device has three main lenses: the ultra-wide, which is 13mm, the 1x, which is 24mm, and the 4x, which is 100mm, and all of these lenses have a fixed aperture at f1.78. Now this is pretty amazing. The 24mm is probably my favorite as it just looks great in most situations, and it shoots video up to 4K and images up to 48 megapixels in both JPEG and RAW. But there's a limitation. The sensor size is about 1 1/3 inches, and that's roughly only a quarter of the size of a full frame sensor, which is a bit noticeable in low light. However, in well-lit conditions, especially landscape images or shots that are taken a bit further away, this camera really shines. Like, sometimes I genuinely think it's hard to tell that this footage was shot on a phone, especially once you dial in the color grade. I took this to Germany and the beach and even used it underwater, and the footage I got is pretty incredible. In bright daylight landscapes and travel content, I think this is where it really delivers. Next, let's talk about the file formats and codecs. The iPhone 17 Pro gives you a few different options for recording. You've got your regular compressed video, HDR, Apple Log 2, and even ProRes RAW, and they all look very good. But here's the thing, like, one of these is my absolute favorite, and spoiler alert, it's not ProRes, despite everyone talking about it. I personally don't really recommend it, and I'll explain exactly why later on in this video. So the image looks great, but is the sound going to be sufficient without an external mic? Here's a sample of how it sounds when you're vlogging. I'm in a pretty noisy environment right now. I have no external microphone attached, and I think it sounds pretty decent for what it is. In my opinion, for stuff like B-roll and casual vlogs, the built-in mic is perfectly fine. But if you're shooting A-roll, where you are talking to the camera and audio quality really matters, you're still gonna want an external mic. Now let's talk about colors, because this was always my biggest criticism with iPhones. When you looked at sunset and warm lighting, it would be very obvious you were looking at iPhone footage. The color science just felt a bit off, especially compared to mirrorless cameras. But this got way better. I shot a bunch of sunset footage and I was genuinely impressed. And when you're shooting an Apple Log 2, you gain more control to match the colors to your main camera if you need to. But we'll get to that in just a second. The next thing is a must-have for everyone who wants to get the most out of this. The Blackmagic Camera app gives you full manual control like you have on a cinema camera. And honestly, it is super intuitive. In the app you can select your lenses, resolution and codec and frame rates. And if you go into the settings, this is where you can change your codec, and you'll find the cool stuff like Apple ProRes 422, RAW and RAW HQ. But keep in mind, these give you huge file sizes and you'll need an external hard drive to make it work properly. For resolution, you got 4K, HD, 722 and OpenGate. And the last one is pretty interesting because it shoots a wider image. That means you can crop in to make it look either vertical or horizontal. On color space, the app allows you to access Apple Log 2. That's actually my favorite throughout all of my shooting. I'm using that, and the Blackmagic app allows you to preview how it looks with a LUT, which is really awesome and convenient. Next, let's talk about the shooting and editing workflow, because this is where things get interesting. You see, most formats are quite easy to work with, and everything drops into apps like Premiere Pro, just like footage from any other camera. No weird compatibility issues or anything like that. Apple Log 2 isn't drastically different from the original Apple Log when it comes to grading. The only exception is RAW, which practically requires an external hard drive when you are shooting, and that's just not worth it for most people, including me. The file sizes are absolutely massive. If you shoot RAW and OpenGate, we're talking about like 250 gigabytes for like just 10 minutes of footage, which is insane and makes the entire workflow very tedious. So unless you're on a big production where you absolutely need RAW for some specific reasons, I would say stick with a smaller codec and you're safe yourself a lot of headaches. And besides, if you shoot on a big production, you're not going to use an iPhone most of the time, so what is the point? Which brings me to the next thing, accessories. I see people building these like massive iPhone rigs with like cages, handles, and honestly, like if you're gonna rig out your phone that much, like just use a real camera. I mean, the whole point of shooting on an iPhone for me is the small form factor, the fact that you can pull this out spontaneously, which brings me to the next topic. Now, this phone has accidentally replaced my GoPro. I know it's not the same category like an action camera, but I've been using it in a similar way at the beach, throwing it in a waterproof bag and even shooting underwater footage. And honestly, I prefer this over an action cam because I always have it with me and I always forget my GoPro. The image quality is better than GoPro in most situations, especially in good lighting. The colors look more natural, and because I'm shooting mostly in Epilogue 2, I have way more control. In post-production plus, the stabilization is really good. It handles movement extremely well. So if you're just like me and using action cam only occasionally, honestly, I think the iPhone is probably all you need. So what's my verdict? Can this replace my main camera? I think specs wise it almost can. The image quality in good lighting is just incredible. The codecs are professional. The color science is fixed. I think on paper it can definitely compete, but in reality it kind of depends on what videos you shoot. So let's say you show up to a paid shoot. I think perception matters. The gear you bring will signal professionalism. Like even if your iPhone footage is just as good as a mirrorless camera, the client is paying for that professional experience, and that is part what justifies your rate. But let's say you shoot personal projects, I think this absolutely works. So in my case, here's what I did. I replaced my secondary camera. I keep my primary camera because I do client work and I want to look professional and justify charging higher rates. But the iPhone does everything my old secondary camera did, and it fits in my pocket, it's smaller, so it is a no-brainer for me. If this review was helpful, hit subscribe, thank you for watching, and I will see you guys in one of the next videos.